Having seen a majority of the species in Jurassic World Evolution 3, we know all the canonical species are returning. However, many of the canonical species models could be a bit more faithful to the design seen on screen. Now, we know that Frontier does not have access to the actual moving models, so they have to create them themselves, but we'll just quickly touch upon some of the sexual dimorphism of a few species that isn't quite what it should be, and basically just go over some improvements that could be made to the existing models. The first example is Dilophosaurus. Now, Dilophosaurus has looked pretty much the same through all three Jurassic World Evolution titles, but it still isn't quite what the Dilophosaurus was in Jurassic Park. So the Jurassic Park Dilophosaurus had a bit of a smaller head, less boxy, like the one that we have currently in the game. The eyes were also a little bit darker than this, that you can see in the picture on the right, and the skull is somewhat more compact. So the connection between the brow and the top of the upper jaw, that's a bit too wide on the Jurassic World Evolution model, and so should be probably reduced a bit more. Like the Jurassic Park Dilophosaurus had a fairly serpentine appearance, and so I feel like that should be kept. The crests were also a little bit more prominent on what is a slightly smaller head on the Dilophosaurus, but there are a few other things. So the overall body proportions of the Dilophosaurus should also be improved, having a much more elongated body than what is technically a recycled raptor. So it has short hind legs and quite a long tail and fairly long body as well, and short forelimbs, and overall is very different to what we currently have. And another thing that I would like to note is a bit more detail on the frill. So the frill of the Dilophosaurus has these very noticeable rough edges, and so like they're very much like the frill of a frill neck lizard, and so I feel like it should be more like that rather than the more wavy folds of the frill that we currently have. And the Dominion design is a little bit different in a few ways, but it remains fairly consistent with the Dilophosaurus that we know. Carnotaurus is another species that could be improved, because frankly, out of all the Fallen Kingdom species, the Carnotaurus is the least accurate to its on-screen counterpart. The Carnotaurus in game, it almost looks a little bit malnourished, so lacking a little bit too little muscle. On the back, the ridges are a little bit more prominent on the Fallen Kingdom model. The head is also a little bit broader, particularly on the top, and a little bit flatter as well, and also coming down the front and having a bit of a wider head. So if we bring up a close-up of the Evolution Carnotaurus and the Fallen Kingdom Carnotaurus, there are some very clear differences. So the details on the Fallen Kingdom Carnotaurus are very noticeable, with a lot of large and small scales mixed in to create a pretty realistic texture. The horns are also slightly more far back and also a bit smaller than those seen on the Frontier model. The face is also slightly wider, particularly the snout, and the edges of the jaws, they don't protrude out as much as they do on the Frontier model. And then you get a good look here of the side of the face. Really prominent details there. The pupils do also lack that really distinct iris that the Fallen Kingdom Carnotaurus has, that you could get a really good look at in the scene where the Carnotaurus is looking into the gyrosphere at Franklin and Claire. But yeah, the Carnotaurus is easily the animal that I want fixed the most, just because the design in Fallen Kingdom was so good. It's a shame that we don't quite have it recreated in Evolution 3. Apatosaurus is another one that I've seen many people mention, and frankly there is a very good reason for that. So the Apatosaurus in game, it stands so low to the ground compared to how it is in the films. It's very much somewhat a fat-looking dinosaur in a way. Like, it doesn't look like it can really go very fast, but the one in the film could certainly motor. So we look at this shot of the Dominion Apatosaurus. You can see the legs are a lot thinner and also a lot longer, so supporting the body much higher off the ground on more well-muscled legs. And in this Fallen Kingdom render, you can see that even better, with a long tail and a fairly elegant form with long legs supporting the body. Like, that is something that I want to see on the Jurassic World Evolution 3 model. And also looking at the toes, they're very different to what we have. So the Jurassic World Apatosaurus was actually going somewhat in the right direction for sauropod feet. And you can see on the front legs, it actually has a sort of spike that is somewhat attributed to diplodocids. So that would certainly be something I would love to see incorporated into the design. And also maybe some slight tweaks to the head to make it a bit smoother. T-Rex is one that's not really talked about as often as the others, but it is one that there is the design is sort of a mix of Jurassic World and Jurassic Park. But if you were to just narrow down to one design, I would pick Jurassic Park, simply because, well, the T-Rexes aren't malnourished in the Jurassic Park films, but they also have a very distinct skull shape. So when you look at a comparison here, so we have the female Rex that was in the Marketplace feature focus, and then we have the Bull Rex in Jurassic Park 3, you can see particularly the end of the top jaw is much wider than it should be. It should be more condensed and tight to the lower jaw. The top of the head is also a bit too wide, I'd say, and the jaws protrude out just a little bit too much. But that's really the only change that needs to be made to the Rex, but also the dimorphism, as if you go back to the Lost World Rexes, the male particularly has a more prominent throat pouch, I'd say, or at least just almost a dewlap in a way. Like, that was one of the main characteristics that I don't really see on the male Rex in the game. And if we were to just make the Jurassic Park T-Rex as a whole the base T-Rex that we have, that would be pretty good, because the design is already perfectly proportioned and just works. And if we were to incorporate a Jurassic World variant, it would have to be the Dominion Rex, because Rexy in Dominion was not malnourished and had a lot more muscle coverage than she did in the previous two films. So that should be the Jurassic World variant. Mamenchisaurus is next. So Mamenchisaurus is one that is also relatively overlooked compared to other dinosaurs in the game. But it is one that, even though it had a very minor role in the Lost World, you can see that the juvenile that we have is somewhat closer to actually what the proportions should be. So Mamenchisaurus in the Lost World had a much more horizontal stance. It held its neck out more to the front than it did straight up. A longer body, not as high shoulders, and a much longer tail as well. Like that, this is the Mamenchisaurus that we should have in the game, just because, well, it is much more than just a noodle neck, as it's been described before. But it's a very cool dinosaur that I think really does deserve some more justice to its design. Stegoceratops is one that, overall, is not the best design of the hybrids. I will say that. Like the amount of plates on the back is almost preposterous. The number of horns is also a little bit much. Like, it's a very exaggerated hybrid. But we did already have a Stegoceratops design to go off of, and that was the original concept art used for Jurassic World, as Stegoceratops was supposed to be in the film, but they didn't include it in the end to not overshadow the Indominus Rex or make the Indominus feel less special. But the Stegoceratops, of course, has a Nasutoceratops like head, and so it wasn't really the design they were going to pick for Secrets of Dr. Wu, because Nasutoceratops hadn't been introduced to the franchise yet until Battle of Big Rock, where we did get Nasutoceratops, and now we have it and have had it for the last few years of Jurassic World Evolution, and yeah, we can certainly get this design now, which would be really good because it is a much more natural looking hybrid, and would probably easily become my favorite just because of how natural of a hybrid it looks. Now onto the dimorphism. If the animals were all supposed to be female in the last game and the game before that, and in the whole franchise before now, then those should be the female designs rather than making whole new ones. And this has caused problems for a few different species that have otherwise been given the wrong design for the wrong animal being represented. The best example of this is the newly revealed Nasutoceratops, which has been given a completely different look to how we know the sexual dimorphism looks in the movies, as we were introduced to both male and female Nasutoceratops in Battle at Big Rock, and then again in the Jurassic World Dominion prologue and briefly in the film, as well as also being featured in Chaos Theory. As you can see, the female on the right is the Nasutoceratops we've come to know in the evolution games, with the shorter horns, rounded snout and smaller frill, and then you have the male on the left that sports longer, larger horns, a more ridged snout, with a slightly more prominent beak, as well as a larger frill that gently curves backwards and then up, compared to the females that goes back and then more noticeably curves upward. The male also has a flat back that rises much less than the females. And yeah, this was a design that I was really hoping was going to be in Jurassic World Evolution 3, as it has been a missing canon design for a long time now. Like, Battle of Big Rock came out in 2019, it's 2025 now. So like, it is certainly my favourite of the two Nasutoceratops designs, just because it does look really cool. But yeah, I do hope that this can be something that can be TLC'd in the future. And a few other instances of this are shown with animals like the Sinoceratops, which the female does get given a more paleo-accurately sized frill, but the female is meant to be the one that is on the right. So like, every dinosaur in Isla Nublar was female, so the Sinoceratops that you see on the right, which is the male here, should really be the female, and the male should have a slightly different design from there. Dilophosaurus also has this, with the male being, of course, the one from Jurassic Park, and then the female having much smaller, reduced crests. And you can see how that has also affected some of the skins, with a few different animal skins being applied to a model that doesn't really represent what we saw in the film, like the Dominion Dilophosaurus, which, if you put it on the female, it has much smaller crests. So some of the more flexible skins that weren't really given to a specific sex of dinosaur would probably work best on both models, so that you could have natural breeding in franchise accurate designs. So particularly the Dominion designs relate less to specific sexes than any skin before that. Like, none of the animals from the Dominion DLCs were named, except for the Atrociraptors, and Demon, the Carnotaurus, is definitely a female. Another is the Ceratosaurus. So Ceratosaurus was introduced in Jurassic Park 3 and had the blade-like horn that the male has here. And so if that was the female, the male should probably have maybe a more pronounced lacrimal crest, perhaps, and maybe a slightly larger, more curved horn, maybe even the sort of spiking that was on the back of the head of the Ceratosaurus in Jurassic Park 3. Then we also have Parasaurolophus, with the male having a much shorter crest than the female does, which is something that is not really something that I'd expect from Parasaurolophus. Parasaurolophus in general had a pretty sizable crest, and if anything, the roles should be reversed. The female should have the shorter crest in accuracy, but in the franchise, the female does have a long crest, but the male should probably just have a longer crest, and maybe a more pronounced bill. And then Carnotaurus also has this. So the male on the left has the horns of the current franchise Carnotaurus, and then the female has much smaller horns, almost making it close to Pycnonemosaurus. Yeah, the male design, the male's model should be the female, and then the male after that should have maybe more pronounced horns. That's sort of what I'm going for, and that's the least that we know of thus far. If any other creatures that are revealed in the next few weeks do have sort of reversed dimorphism that is averted to that in they've seen in the franchise, then we'll probably bring it up. And that's all for a quick little video. Just wanted to cover something that has been brought up in the community feeds I'm in, particularly the Jurassic World Evolution 3 Discord, the modding Discord, and the Frontier Discord, where there's just a few things that some people haven't agreed on. So I wanted to cover it myself and just go over some of the details. And yeah, the Frontier does not have access to the models, so we can lay off that, but some improvements to the models would be appreciated to just bring them that bit closer to the movie designs. And if I were to pick any, I'd pick the Carnotaurus and Dilophosaurus primarily. Like, those two need to be more in line with the films. Apatosaurus as well, and Mamenchisaurus. Oh, basically everything I picked in this video should. Most of the other dinosaurs, like the Velociraptor, the Stegosaurus, the Triceratops, the Brachiosaurus, they're all pretty much spot on to the ones that you see in the films. So nothing really needs to be changed there. So yeah, they're pretty much perfect. So otherwise, let me know if there are any other dinosaurs or species from the films that you think should be improved on in Evolution 3, and any dimorphism that you don't agree with or that should be changed. Leave your thoughts down in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.